Welcome back to Everything Wrong With, a review series I do here on Destructoid where I front load the video with all of my gripes and complaints, and then afterwards talk about all the positives. Today's video is going to be a little different because I usually hop into a recently released game, but for whatever reason, Marvel's Avengers popped into my head, and now I want to talk about it because this game, and everything that's wrong with it, is extra heartbreaking. Let's get into it. You might be wondering, why does it hurt so bad that Avengers was totally mediocre? It's because it was developed by Crystal Dynamics, the studio behind the Tomb Raider reboot, Tomb Raider and Rise of the Tomb Raider. The first two games in the reboot were so good, so dang good. But today, unfortunately, we're going to talk all about Marvel's Avengers, a game that I tried to tell myself was good for quite a while as I was playing it, and then sooner or later, I just had to admit to myself, this sucks. This is not good. It has good qualities, good elements, but overall, totally disappointing. And I'll just start off with a huge negative, which was this was supposed to be a games-as-service game, meaning they were going to keep supporting it for years upon years, adding characters, adding story, and the idea sounds really cool until you actually play the game, and you realize that the game feels like it was meant to be a normal, traditional, single-player or co-op game, and then they forced in all of these gross service elements like loot and spongy enemies and repetitive combat. Ugh, totally gross, and it totally ruined the game. The structure of this game was just so weird. It opened up feeling like a linear, amazing, story-driven experience, and I'll get to the positives, but then when you get to the hub area where all the Avengers hang out and they have little quips, little back and forths, it just totally falls off. They start introducing all the Avengers, you're playing as different characters in different missions. Honestly, I think the game would have been better as just a Miss Marvel game. It opens up, you're playing as Miss Marvel, you're seeing the Avengers, you're seeing it through her eyes, and it's like, wow, she thinks they're so awesome. And then she gets to see the reality of the situation, the fact that they weren't great friends, that there was a huge falling out, which was really cool. But then sooner or later, once you get to the hub area, it opens up, you're playing as everyone, you immediately notice, okay, everyone feels the same, these missions are repetitive, none of it actually makes any sense. To open doors, you're standing on a huge panel that all your characters have to stand on and fight enemies in order to open a door. Like, how many times do you have to do that in this game? Way too many times, and it doesn't make sense. A lot of the scenarios you're put in, they don't make any sense. And I think that's largely because the only mechanic in this game is combat. So what are you doing the entire time? You're just fighting. You're running to the next area and fighting. There's no other gameplay mechanic that even comes to mind that you're doing in this game. Like, for example, in the Arkham games. The combat's great. It's actually fantastic, but it's not the only thing you're doing. You're Batman, so of course, you're a detective. That's a huge part of the game. You're constantly analyzing things, talking to different characters, figuring out what had happened in an area, and that's freaking awesome. If Batman Arkham was only combat, it would suck. You have to have some element of pacing to your games, and that's the problem with all of these service games. Just like Suicide Squad, what does it look like you're doing the whole time? Just combat. Yes, the combat might be great, but that's just not enough nowadays. The combat can be really good, and everything else around it will be terrible. And then what do you have? You have Anthem. And honestly, Avengers is pretty similar to Anthem, except Avengers actually had way more potential because they built up this world and these characters in the first half of the game that are like, okay, this is actually pretty cool. And then, like I said, the game just bombards you with service stuff. You're picking up loot boxes in the environment. Why are there loot boxes in the middle of the desert that look exactly like the loot boxes at the Avengers compound? It makes no sense. And also, why would the Hulk need loot? He's the Hulk. He smashes things. He doesn't need to put on a new pair of shorts and have his power level go up 3. All of the live service trappings that you can imagine are in Marvel's Avengers. It could have been an amazing story-driven single-player or co-op game, but because of the way it was structured with its hub area and spongy enemies and characters that all feel way too similar, along with the pointless loot, it just feels nasty. And speaking of the combat, because I barely touched on it, why does Black Widow feel just like the Hulk? Why does Captain America feel just like Iron Man? Heroes like Black Widow and Hawkeye should not be able to physically jump just as high as the Hulk, just as high as Miss Marvel. It makes no sense. And don't even get me started on Iron Man. Iron Man is supposed to feel free. You're supposed to be fast and agile, beaming, shooting, doing all types of crazy spins through the air, basically like Anthem, to be honest. And he feels so slow. Why are Iron Man's jets the same speed as Hawkeye's sprinting? And honestly, probably has something to do with the way the game will run. They physically can't make Iron Man go faster, or else the game will struggle to keep up. It'll start chugging. But still, that's not our problem. Iron Man shouldn't be slow as molasses. He should feel freaking fun to play as when you're flying. And it's not. It's just slowly flying through the air. And it's just so disappointing. I'm usually one to love linear games, and that's what these missions are. You're going through linear environments. That's fine, but when you have characters that are supposed to feel super, because they are superheroes, and they're being restricted, it just totally hurts the experience. And that's what I felt playing as a bunch of the characters. And even Hulk, I think he can jump a little higher than certain characters, but he's Hulk. He should be able to jump way further, and he doesn't. He just doesn't, because everyone has to stick together. We all have to work together and stand on these tiles so that the door will open. It's just silly. The battle scenarios and puzzles, if you can even call them that, rarely make any sense in the context of the world. And like I said, there's loot boxes scattered throughout. Nothing really makes any sense. However, if this would have been just a normal video game where you're playing through it, you don't have to worry about loot when you're playing as the Hulk. You don't have to worry about loot when you're playing as Iron Man, which doesn't make any sense. He has a suit. What would the loot even do? In all of these complaints, I'm only touching on the base game. We got the Black Panther DLC, the only significant story DLC. We thought we were going to get a bunch of them. We got one. And it's honestly because the game just was a total flop at launch, and they can't just keep supporting a game that's not making them any money. But still, like, one major expansion, it was actually pretty cool going to Wakanda, but again, Black Panther just felt so similar to everyone else. And honestly, I think the reason why they feel so similar to me is because of the way the buttons are laid out. Every single button does the exact same thing on every character, so a character that wouldn't make sense having a projectile, like I mentioned, the Hulk, he has a projectile now. Spider-Man, the PlayStation exclusive DLC that everyone built up to be this amazing thing, ended up just being, oh my god, Yoga Spider-Man. Zumba Spider-Man, the worst Spider-Man animations I think I've ever seen in any video game, and it's in a AAA game developed by Crystal Dynamics. That is insane. And then, like I said, there's the whole service component, which I did not take part in because the service component hurt the main game because of the way it was structured, because of the way it had to be structured in order to be a service game that you can also play through like a single-player experience. And it's just a total letdown. And it's all such a shame because, and I'm going to get to some positives now, the game opens up pretty awesome. You're playing as Miss Marvel, you see the world through Kamala's eyes, you meet all of these characters, you see how she gets her powers and how that affects her daily life. And it was my introduction to Kamala Khan because I hadn't seen the Miss Marvel TV show yet, and I actually like this version better than the TV show. I thought it was done really well. I was immediately drawn to her character. It almost made me wish that, hey, what if this was just a Miss Marvel video game where you get to see the Avengers, you're on this quest to bring everyone together, but you just play as Miss Marvel the whole time. And it wasn't a service game where they fed in all these stupid parts that didn't need to be in the game. I think that would have worked out way better in their favor. It wouldn't have had half the budget that they spent on figuring out how the service components are going to work, because I'm sure that getting all that to work is half of a development cycle for a live service game. It would have been this shorter, narrative-driven experience, similar to Spider-Man, Marvel's Spider-Man, similar to, I'm assuming, what the upcoming Wolverine game is going to be, or a bunch of previous Marvel games that we used to get back in the day. But no, AAA development has to aim for live service, because if you can't keep people coming back and making more money, it's not worth it to a lot of these studios. And that's unfortunate. Just really unfortunate. Because like I said, Marvel's Avengers has some really great components. I like the characters. I like Kamala. The combat, while I did think it got extremely repetitive, I think it starts off pretty fun. I think they could have built on that had they not kept throwing new characters in, where you're supposed to play as a bunch of different characters and nobody feels special. And that might be one of my main issues, is that no one really feels special. Every character, both narratively and combat-wise, feel like dumbed down versions of what their characters were in previous video games. Like, I feel more like the Hulk in Hulk Ultimate Destruction on GameCube than I feel like him in this brand new AAA game. And that's just really sad, unfortunately. But yeah, I actually didn't get to many positives, but the video's already running kind of long, but I didn't hate every element. I like some of the story stuff. I mean, the acting is top-notch. They got some of the best actors in the video game scene. Nolan North, Troy Baker, Laura Bailey, the three names that are everywhere, but they're everywhere because they're all great actors. And I think it's a little bit of a waste because ultimately the story ends up getting too convoluted. Here I am accidentally getting into gripes again. I'm trying to be positive about this game, but years later, thinking back on it, it's such a disappointment. And like I said, mainly because this is Crystal Dynamics. I love those Tomb Raider games so much. And then they spent 5 years on this, or however long it was. I'm assuming it was a really long development cycle. But yeah, let me know all your thoughts down in the comments section below. I usually would get to more positives, but I just went on a roll. I just can't stop being negative about this game. So if you can think of any, let me know down in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you didn't, hit that thumbs down. Thanks a lot for watching. I will talk to you guys later. See ya.